Are there any questions that you have before we get into this? Is there anything else that you want to know before we kick it off?
I can't think of anything.
Perfect. Well, Warren, how are you feeling? You ready to go? You ready to go?
Yeah, man, I'm super excited.
All right.
Yeah.
All right, this is going to be perfect. All right. So, hello and welcome to Pop Culture Party People, the only podcast on the internet that is all about pop culture and the only podcast that actively promotes you doing PCP on a regular basis. We think it's good for your health. We
Honestly,
really think
you have to ingest PCP to really get through the day. And PCP being pop culture party, that is, obviously. We wouldn't suggest the uses of drugs of any sorts. We just strictly mean the PCP of this podcast.
No, of course. Like, I know a lot of people, when they hear you should do PCP, they're like, maybe you guys should rein that back a little bit. You've got younger listeners. And to that, I say, why wouldn't you want them to join the pop culture party? It's totally fine.
Yeah, if anyone needs a new kind of reinvention, it's definitely the drug PCP. So we're just trying to really take that, adopt it, and give it a new positive spin, if possible.
Yeah, we're giving it a new branding. And you know what? I know somebody who fucking absolutely loves PCP. And that is our special guest today, a Mr. Matthew Page. Hello, and welcome to Pop Culture Party People.
Greetings. I'm glad you guys clarified what that meant.
Yeah, Matt was like, "Wait, what?"
Yeah, I was like, if I wasn't paying attention and this is a drug podcast, I'm in so much trouble.
Yeah, all of the marketing materials I gave you, Matt, were specifically explicit that we love angel dust on this
Didn't
podcast.
read them.
Oh,
Didn't
so
read
sorry.
them. Never read them.
Specify that to you that we're huge proponents of illegal drugs.
Whatever people send me, I don't read. I'm just like, and that has put me in these situations before where I'm like, oh, I probably should have paid attention to what I agreed to.
No, like we said, we're trying to rebrand PCP into the Pop Culture Party.
Yeah.
And also, I mean, I feel like angel dust fell out of vogue like a really long time ago. You never hear about people talking about PCP anymore.
Yeah, I feel like angel dust was always something that was, I feel like I've, like in comic books in the 80s, when someone was acting really crazy, they were on the angel dust. I don't feel like that's like a plot point anymore in story.
Yeah.
Right.
The last time I remember it being a part of pop culture was in Trading Places when Dan Aykroyd goes to the jail and Frank Oz, the fucking voice of Miss Piggy and Yoda himself, dips his finger into the thing and he's like, this is PCP, angel dust. You're going away for a long time, buddy. And then that was, they were like, oh, Dan Aykroyd does it, and they just shut it down. They just forgot about it, and they never talked about it again.
I mean,
I do miss that was
Chris Tucker in Friday, right? I mean, infamous angel dust, where he ends up in like a pigeon coop, and then everyone makes fun of him, and he has the twitch the rest of the movie. So
That's true.
I miss that was the easiest way to check drugs back in 80s movies, was just to just wet your finger and just be like, yeah, it's good. It's good. Whatever it was good. You just had to dab it on your tongue, and then you were like, this is good cocaine.
Yeah, it's really high quality. I can tell because it tastes potent.
Right.
Sarge, how do you know that? Like, what school did you go to get that information? But yes, hello, welcome, Matt. Super excited to have you on the podcast today. For those of you who don't know Matt Pages, he's an amazing actor and the creator of a very successful YouTube channel, Master Ken and Amaradote, but is also one of the stars of a brand new film that just came out a couple of weeks ago called Paper Tigers, which we are going to talk about all in this episode. We're very excited about all that. But first, we got to talk about geek news. This is how we start off every show. And boy, oh boy, did we get a lot of geek news this week. Admittedly, some very sad news at the top. Wanted to pay our respects. Me and Warren are huge Berserk fans. We've talked about it a couple times on the podcast already, how influential it was for us. The tragic news of Kentaro Miura passing came to us this week. He died back on May 6th, but they eventually released the records to America a couple of days ago. And man, that was like a heavy blow for a lot of people.
Yeah, it's
Warren,
tough.
do you want to speak about it a little bit?
Like manga writers and artists have such a tough schedule. They have to put out these beautiful, especially Mirai too, with his just fantasy, with these huge sprawling images within a week, and that tight schedule really puts them in a lot of health concerns. mean, Oda with One Piece is definitely a huge concern. And it goes to show that he died at the age of 59 at such a young age that these schedules just really put such a toll on the guy that it's sad that he had to pass away doing what he loved and not be able to complete his story. It's
well, it was actually it was 54. He was even younger 54. Than that. Fucking 54 years old. Matt, I know you said, we were talking a little earlier before we were recording, that you don't know what Berserk is. Or are you much of a manga reader, anime? Or
no, I'm not aware of. I'm not really plugged into that.
Well, the crazy thing is that for a lot of creators, and I know that like once they kind of dip their toe into it, they'll really start to love it. And I know that you're a huge lover of like action and fantasy stuff. This might be one of those perfect books for you to like get into the genre with, because this is one of the most influential pieces of anime and manga creation that's ever been around. Mm-hmm. This guy and Berserk has had so many influences on, I could even see some parallels with Tarantino's stuff, with other American creators. Like his works really wormed their way into a lot of pop culture in the past couple of years. So don't want to talk any more about it too much. We just wanted to pay our respects, say thank you so much for creating Berserk. And if you haven't read it yet, it's a great opportunity. Moving on to a topic that all of us know a little bit more about. We had a brand new film drop on Netflix a couple of days ago by, I can't say a fan favorite of the podcast, Zack Snyder. We had Army of the Dead. We're very split on how we feel about Zack Snyder. Matt, how do you feel about Mr. Snyder's work?
As someone who would like to work with him again in the future, I'm a big fan. No, I have to say, to me, he is a very interesting filmmaker, because there are films that he has created that really resonate with me, and then some that don't at all. Mm-hmm. And I've tried to figure out why that is. For instance, the reason I was excited for Army of the Dead is that Dawn of the Dead, his remake of Dawn of the Dead, is one of my all-time favorite horror movies.
Yes.
The way it's shot, the pace with which it moves, the structure of that movie, the way it really invigorates like the zombie genre. I was so blown away by it. I've seen it a bunch of times. It's one of my favorite zombie movies and one of my favorite all-time horror movies. And then weirdly also, I don't know why, but Batman versus Superman is one of my favorite. I can't stop watching that movie. And I'm not going to say that that's because it's really good. I'm
is
so
it like a
captivated.
hate watch? Do you like
it's like
watch?
junk food? Like, is it like it's so delicious that you can't, it's not good for you, but you enjoy ingesting it?
Right. Maybe it's like, I just had an analogy that I should not say, but I feel like it's like if the building across the street was on fire. And on the one hand, it's very terrible that it's on fire, but you just keep watching it because you're like, this is kind of cool. Like, look at the way the building is collapsing, and look at all the smoke, and look at there's a lot of excitement in this.
You left out the fact that the building was an abandoned fireworks factory that also somehow exists in an astral plane where it's always in slow motion. It's a very weird.
I have watched the ultimate. I have the ultimate edition of Batman vs Superman on Blu-ray, and I have watched that damn thing 40 times, 50 times. I cannot stop watching that movie. And again, I'm not saying it's a great film, but I am captivated by this movie.
Yeah, you can't.
I don't know why.
You can't look away from it. Well, I don't know. I feel I agree with you completely. There are definitely Snyder films that I like, and then other Snyder films where I'm just like, what the fuck is going on? Why is this happening? And that is kind of how I felt as I was.
What's
watching
one of the
Army
ones?
of the Dead. I mean,
what's one of the other ones that makes you feel that way though? What like that makes you think what the fuck is going on? I'm just curious.
Well, it's one of those things where, as a director gets older and progresses, right? And like really becomes more of an artist, you would think that maybe they would break some of the awful habits that they have, like the idea that everything needs to be in slow motion. You would think that they would maybe be like, okay, we did that. It's a cool effect, but maybe me as a person, I need to grow more than this. And I do have to say there's not a ton of slow motion in Army of the Dead, but he replaced it with something even fucking weirder. He shot the entire movie almost in the most shallow depth of field you you can shoot a film in, and it is weirdly jarring. It is the entire time you're watching, you're just like, who made this choice? Was it the only lens you had on set? I don't understand why you chose the 18 for all of this. It's killing me to watch this.
Yeah.
How did everybody else feel? I've got a lot of emotions.
Yeah, I've been playing around a lot with After Effects over the pandemic. And what really threw me off was the infographics in the beginning. It's the laziest infographics. It's just purple font, simple lettering for it. And you would think that they would go a little bit more expensive with it, given the cast and the fact of the zombie theme. I thought maybe it'd be like an intense, like...
him returning to the zombie genre, which he like made amazing. Yeah, revolutionized it with Dawn of the Dead.
And on paper, this is just a nice, like, homage to that, too. It has the same, like, comedic beats. It has, like, the great ensemble you want to see. I mean, I'm a huge Batista fan, so seeing him have a vehicle that he leads is really interesting, really fun. In the end, I just kind of felt like it was almost like they were, like, doing an imitation of what they were supposed to be doing, more so than actually living in what they wanted to be doing.
Yeah, it kind of feels like a very, very expensive SNL skit. Like, like all of the beats, you're like, why would you go steal from that? Like, also, if you've got the owner of the bank, why do you have to crack the bank? He must know the code to the bank because he owns the bank. Like, don't you see why this is weird? Like, all of these things that, like, I know a lot of people are like, well, it's just a dumb zombie movie that you're supposed to turn your brain on, blah, blah. Well, you know what? I do have a brain, and every once in a while, when you make such a bad decision, I have to be like, well, this doesn't make any goddamn sense. Like, why are there robot zombies? Who created those? What the fuck is going on?
The safe thing was interesting also too. Thinking, I mean, that was where in the building was that? That was kind of high up, wasn't it? It wasn't like on the ground. For some reason, the
safe, instead of being in the bowels of the building, which you would think, that's a good place to have a safe. Really hard to get to. No, let's put it like in the middle of the building. Totally fine.
Yeah. And I just think about like, okay, so the guy locked his friend in the safe to keep him alive. Safe. Yeah, safe in the event that something happened. And so presumably the building was knocked over by a nuclear bomb. The safe fell several stories, had rubble on top of it. And this guy just sort of pops out at the end. You're like, that is one also, serious friggin' safe.
I don't know if you realize, but the safe completely protected from radiation. No worries there.
Right.
Just the fall.
You don't know that bank vaults are actually completely radiation proof. Just like that. They're made of the same material that Harrison Ford's refrigerator was made of.
In Indiana Jones 4, right. Yeah. Same material. Yeah, we were thinking that as he crawled up out of the safe, as like, man, that's cool that he survived that incredible fall. Too bad he's going to die from radiation poisoning in like 2 weeks because he's he's at ground zero. He's going to be so sick.
I mean, there were definitely things I liked. I kind of liked the idea of like the alpha zombies. I thought that was cool. I liked Tig Notaro, especially with them having to replace, of course, Crystalia after all of his accusations. Like, there are things about the movie that I liked, and there was definitely times I could turn my brain off, but for the most part, it's one of those things where I'm like, Snyder, I like you, I just need you to be better. I just need you to grow a little bit more as a creative person. You can still have fun. Like, look at how cool Zombieland was. Like, that's a great zombie movie that's funny and has all these, like, weird, kooky things. But, you know, it also kind of makes sense.
Here's my question. If he didn't have his name, would it have worked? If he was to start using a pseudonym or have like someone else, he like has a puppet director, he gets to do his things with someone else in front of it.
You mean Mac Miter?
Yeah. I feel at this point, like his name works against him to the point where it's like he has to achieve these really incredible heights, or else it's like kind of like a joke or something. Because he has to do with these big movies now. After doing 300 now, it's set such a standard for him that it must be really hard to do something like a movie like this, which is just like a fun film for him probably to make.
I just want him to do a small romantic comedy so badly.
Yeah. That's where slow-mo would work. The recreation of slow-mo would be incredible.
When my friends and I watched the Snyder cut of Justice League, we had joked about there being a lot more slow-mo. But when the hot dog scene, we were absolutely, which I loved that scene, but I was dying because of how much the slow-mo was such an important part of all of that. It killed me in the best way. I actually loved the Snyder cut. I thought it was great. But it was its own. Trying to analyze it afterwards in comparison to the Joss Whedon version, which I've seen many times as well, I couldn't even really compare the two because I was just like, this is one of those weird moments in film history where a director was able to do something that almost no director ever gets to do, which is go back and revisit a film. Didn't reshoot a ton, but re-edit a ton and rewrite it with CGI scenes and expand on all this other stuff that he wanted to do in a way where the running time didn't seem to matter. The scope of it could be as sprawling as he wanted it to be. For a director to be able to go back and revise a movie, and also not that long ago. It's not like Coppola going back and doing the redux of Apocalypse Now. It's like this movie only came out a few years ago, and he just got to go back and sort of do what he meant to do in the first place. So I don't know. Those are categories where it's hard for me to compare Snyder's movies to other movies. I just compare Snyder movies to other Snyder movies because I feel like he's almost his own genre of film.
That's actually probably a better way to look at it. Well, you happened to work on Army of the Dead, correct?
I did one day.
So for those of you who don't know, me and Matt both live in Albuquerque, New Mexico, a very good film town, and Army of the Dead, the majority of it was shot not in Nevada, where they say the movie takes place. It was shot in Albuquerque, New Mexico. So what was that like? Did you happen to work with Zach a little bit, or was it second unit? How was it?
Yeah, no, it was fun. It was fun to be on the set. I got to see, they built some sections of the Vegas Strip all broken down and stuff, of course, with some very recognizable signage, but then massive green screens to sort of fill in the background so that they could do the stuff that they needed to do. And I got to go on for one day. It turned into 2 days. We got rained out the first day, so I got paid for 2 days, even though they only neted me for one, which is always nice. Yeah. So I spent the first day just waiting around for them to be like, come back tomorrow. But it was fine. I got to meet Zach. I got to do a little bit of improv, be like a mean border security guy who's like pushing around some of the folks, the immigrants, I guess, that are near the border area. But then the thing was, so we did a little bit of that. That was kind of second unit. But then once I was face to face with Zach, I had one line, and I was, excited to be in a Zack Snyder movie. And then we did the quick camera rehearsal, and somebody else who had a bigger part in the movie, said my line, and I was like, and Zach remembered, and he was like, oh yeah, we're giving that line to him, but you can say something like, I don't know, you can say something if you want. Okay, rolling. And I was like, I think I just lost my line in the movie. Yeah. And when you're there, when you're the union guy, but you're the day player, and you're the guy that has the line. That has happened to me several times where I go in, it's like I'm a cop, a border patrol agent, a security guard, or whatever it is, and I'm just filler to facilitate something happening. So then it was like I was excited to be there. I was excited to be in the movie, and then I lost my line, and I was like, I'm probably not going to be in this movie. And then sure enough, they cut the whole scene. They cut the whole scene anyway.
Well, I mean, that's a great story. Was he at least nice to work with? It sounds like the thing is, he sounds like a really nice director. From everything I've read and heard about him, he is a pleasure to work with.
Yes. Yeah, when me and the other actors who were working that day were brought up by the AD team, he shook our hands, introduced himself, told us to stay comfortable, told us what he was looking forward to for the day. And he's also he's very involved, obviously. He checks in with everybody and he's very polite. But because he was also the director of photography on the movie, I mean, he has the camera on his shoulder, and he's just doing his thing, So it's like he's checking in with people, but he's obviously about as busy as you can be in that situation, being the director and the DP. So, but it was just cool to be on the set, especially, like I said, since I'm just a fan of his films, especially of Dawn of the Dead being one of my favorite ones, I was like, oh man, he's doing another zombie movie. I'm so excited. I was just generally excited that he was doing one.
Yeah, no, that is awesome. And I'm sure that you could commiserate a little bit because you too are a writer, director, producer yourself. So it's, you're probably like, I get what that guy's going through. And you're like, oh, by the way, you should probably change the lens. I don't know if you know this, but all these shots are going to be super shallow. You should maybe consider using a different lens and maybe hiring a DP who actually knows how to focus pull. But that's all stuff for another day. I'm sure you got it under control, Zach.
And then he was like, yeah, so that guy's going to say your line now. Thanks.
It's like I probably would have been out of focus anyway. So
I think we got two more pieces of geek news. One we could talk about relatively quickly, and that is the announcement today that we are apparently getting a brand new Willy Wonka movie, but like a sexy Willy Wonka. It's an origin story featuring Timothée Chalamet from Call Me By Your Name as the titular Willy Wonka. And I don't understand why this film exists. Let's discuss.
I mean, the new Dune must be amazing, right? Like, they're probably just trying to latch to his cart now because of how amazing it was going to be, so they're just going to give him every franchise possible next.
Well, this goes back to what we talked about last week with Cruella, where it's like, they were like, the Joker did really well. Mm-hmm. Okay. Joker, solid character, loads of backstory. How can we incorporate characters that have zero backstory, like Cruella de Vil, who only wants to make a dog coat, and Willy Wonka, who is an eccentric chocolatier? How can we make these into standalone film properties? And the studios, because they apparently don't really want to have original ideas anymore, they're just like, yeah, greenlight it. I don't care. Yeah, let's make a sexy Wonka. Let's do it.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess I see the appeal from a business standpoint as every company in that position has a certain number of properties they own. And they know that they can always go back to the well and say, well, we own all of the licenses and trademarks for this. So how can we repackage it? I mean, how often do we do? I mean, I am not saying they should make a new Batman movie every 6 months, but I would go. I would go every 6 months, even if I was just like, God, I can't believe they're making another one. But I'd be like, but I'm going to watch it because it's Batman, and I will watch every Batman movie for the rest of my life. But when it comes to something like, I'm sure that they look at things like the Willy Wonka property and go, okay, well, I mean, what haven't we done with it yet? We have to sell this again. So what haven't we done? I don't know. He's younger, I guess.
Let's tell the gritty backstory of how he fought like chocolate gangs to create the Wonka factory. Right. I'm fine with watching that movie where he is a young upstart in a rival chocolate clan, and they have to fight the Mint brothers for territory on, Sweet Street. I am all for this, but I don't think it's going to be that.
Well, there is the story of him getting the Oompa Loompas, which has all that crazy interdimensional travel of them fighting off monsters. And then that can then lead to the glass elevator. For those of you who are big Wonka heads like I am, there's actually a lot of room to play around here.
Is this a time where actually guy is actually really excited about this movie?
So hear me out. So Timmy Chalamet, huge for the Gen Z future younger generation we have yet to label. And actually, Willy Wonka is a badass. He had to fight a lot of monsters to save the Oompa Loompas. And ergo, that glass elevator needs this vehicle to exist. So I'm actually very excited for Timmy Chalamet as Willy Wonka.
Thank you, actually, guy. I didn't realize how deep and complex Willy Wonka was. It was really... thank you. Put it into a whole new perspective for me.
Yeah, sure.
Oh my God. Well, that's it. And then the final thing is today we got the brand new trailer by Marvel for the Eternals. And I have to say, I am super duper excited about this. Doesn't look like any Marvel film that has come before it. And that is super exciting. Don't get me wrong. I like the Marvel franchise and I like what they've done, but there's definitely certain tropes and things that have gotten a little bit stale to me. And it really feels like, especially with the direction that, Nomadland, what's her name? Chloe Zhao? Yeah, with her direction, it seems like she's going to do like a lighter touch. This seems like it might be a much more emotionally affecting Marvel film.
Yeah, for sure. the sweeping landscapes, and it has almost like a touch of like the classic epic movies of past, of being more centered around the people with, I don't know, beautiful sunsets. And yeah, I don't know what to think of it. It looks gorgeous, and I can't wait to watch it.
Man,
I watched the trailer because you mentioned that we were going to talk about this. I know nothing about the origin of. I've never read the comics as far as the Eternals go.
Neither do we. We're pretty big comic book people, and I know fucking nothing about this.
Oh, okay, good. Then I feel a little bit more comfortable about that. It does look interesting. I think one of my thoughts at the end was, how many Eternals are there? Because 16 people were standing in that last shot, and I just think, at what point are we not going to be able to fit all the characters on the screen? Because if we have the Avengers and if just the Eternals are 17 people, and then we have the new version of the Avengers, and then, you know what I mean? At a certain point, you're like, we just literally can't fit everybody. I don't know.
Well, you know what? That's why Marvel is inventing brand new lenses to just be like, all right, we can't. Okay, further back. Go further back.
Yeah.
We're going to start watching movies in that, that screen on The Mandalorian that's like a curved background that shows the whole world. We're just going to have to start watching movies on this massive curved screen just so that we can see everybody that's in the movie, because there's going to be too many actors.
We'll have to wear VR goggles in the movie theater to really see truly everything now.
Yeah. It's a full VR experience. Actually, I am looking forward to the day that we actually get a real good VR movie. I actually think that could be a really fucking interesting way to watch a film, being completely immersed in it.
Well, actually, one exists. It's called The Getaway. It's about you play the getaway driver, and everyone around you is robbing a bank. So, ergo,
that's pretty fucking cool. Yeah. It's film length.
It's on the PlayStation Store. It's a free movie on the PlayStation Store.
Huh. I will actually have to check that out. I don't have a VR system, but that sounds really fucking cool.
You can do the whole phone on cardboard box if you want to.
Ooh, the best way to experience it.
Are you guys excited for movies to begin filming vertically, like the way people watch their phones? Because there was a couple of filmmakers who were legit doing that, who were just basically taking these massive film cameras, shooting anamorphic and turning them so that we just watch a whole movie vertically. And I was like, at first that sounded so stupid. And then I was like, also kind of an interesting creative challenge if you think about that. If I was going to watch the movie...
That sounds like a Quibi of an idea.
Right.
So it's going to succeed.
I felt so bad when Quibi went under, because there were several trailers on there that I was like, I would watch that show. And then I went on with my life. I did not download Quibi. I never made any effort whatsoever to watch anything on Quibi. And yet there were several trailers where I was like, oh, that's an interesting show. Anyway, back to YouTube,
Quibi's hubris is one of my favorite things of the past 5 years. Those dudes were so we're going to destroy Netflix, Hulu, Apple TV, video. We're going to do it. And you know why? Because you can do this. It's on the vertical, my friend. Guess what? And you're right. They had properties that looked pretty fucking good. I heard that the Most Dangerous Game was supposed to be a phenomenal series, but you know what? The human brain only has so much capacity, and mine is already filled with every show that's already on all these other streaming platforms. So you got to break the mold, my friend, and you can't just do it by saying Quibi.
And it must have been such a gut kick for it to go out of business in a pandemic where people have nothing to do,
locked in their house, having to watch content.
Can you imagine those board meetings where they sit around? They're like, I don't get it. It's all they have to do is watch it. There's nothing else going on, and they won't watch.
What more can we do? We filled it with marketing. We got the biggest stars on there. What more can we give them?
We released this pandemic knowing that it should be great for our bottom line.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Quibi sponsored COVID release.
Yeah. We went to Wuhan and we released this. And it is not working. I don't know why more
first bat. What more can we do?
I don't know why more people aren't looking into the Quibi conspiracy. That's all I'm saying. You heard it here first.
Oh, wait, did Quibi just become QAnon? Is that really how they rebranded?
Whoa. Quibanon.
Quibanon.
Women on.
If that
Oh,
becomes a
God.
thing after this, we started this.
Yeah.
Oh,
Seriously.
absolutely. Yeah, we can mark it to the day when this happened. I hope to see this on 8 Channel, though I'll never go. So
Right.
well, that is all we have for Geek News today. I'm looking forward to a lot of this stuff. And yeah, Eternals looks really good. But now we're going to move on to the main event.
Yes.
Mr. Matthew Page, thank you once again so much for coming on. Like, means the world to me that you would take some time out of your very fucking hectic schedule to come onto our podcast. And I think that's kind of what we wanted to talk about first. Could you kind of give us a little bit of your backstory before we kind of dive into your career a touch?
Mm-hmm.
Sure. I'm from back east. Originally, I moved out to New Mexico to go to film school at the ill-fated College of Santa Fe, which closed a few years ago. But I was happy to be there when I was there. They had a great program. I got my undergrad there, met a bunch of great people, I wanted to learn the craft of filmmaking, and I didn't have any of the technical skills. I was making little short films on a video camera, but I didn't really understand. I had no formal training, so I was sort of fumbling through that process. And when I graduated, the plan was to move to Los Angeles, like most people do. But the film incentives were driving a lot of business here. Breaking Bad was starting to shoot. In Plain Sight was starting to shoot. The Albuquerque studios had just been built. And so I said, well, I'll stay here until things slow down. That was my argument. And within my first year out of college, I got into SAG. I got a speaking line on a couple of shows and got into the union. I got some video production gigs for my company to pay the bills. And it just kept going. It just, I had slower years, here and there, but for the most part, I never really ran out of work, and it ended up being the place to be.
Not only that, it's hella cheaper to live in Albuquerque than Los Angeles.
Huge factor. The cost of living here has remained very reasonable, and it is a beautiful place to live. And the fact that I could do the things that I love to do, which was work as an actor on film and TV shows when they came into town, but also create my own work with a really vibrant, independent creator community here. It kind of just had everything that I wanted.
Yeah, no, it's the whole reason that I came out here as well. It was one of those things where I was living in New York and I just didn't know where I was going to go next. And of course, LA is the number one place you would think, right? And you're like, I need to be a filmmaker. I need to go to LA. And it just so happens that a couple hours away, there is an even more affordable, vibrant place to live. And that is Albuquerque. I'm so fucking glad I moved here. It's kind of insane. But can you tell us a couple of the productions that you've worked on and that you've been a part of and kind of things that you were like honored to be a part of?
Yeah, for sure. One of my earliest gigs was actually, I had a bit part in Breaking Bad in season 1, when Walt and Jesse have to steal like a large amount of chemicals because they've overpromised how much meth they can deliver.
Yep.
They break into the chemical plant and they lock a security guard in a porta potty.
That is
And
you.
That's me.
Awesome.
I got locked in a porta potty, and that was and it was one night, it was one gig, and the weirdest thing about that is that in retrospect, thinking about like everyone was really excited about the show and they believed in what they were doing, but nobody knew what they were working on. Nobody knew that this was going to be something that was going to change television, really, that it was going to be a historic show.
Especially with season 1. Like, I know that, like, yeah, that must have been insane because it didn't really gain super popularity until it got onto Netflix with season 3. And that's when it fucking exploded.
Right.
And they even had to stop early because of, I think it was either the writer's strike.
It was the writer's strike.
Yeah, they had to stop on episode 7 or 8, even though they had intended to go further. And yet, the show was solid enough on its own that it, built into this incredible, this phenomenon. So that was just a lucky break, and that was just a right place, right time kind of thing. Similar was a bit part that I did on the movie Sicario with Josh Brolin and Emily Blunt and Benicio del Toro. I kind of read for this quick part and then got a call that I needed to go to rehearsal. And I didn't fully understand. I don't even know if I knew who was in the movie because I just read it very quickly. And then they were like, hey, you got it, but you got to go. They're going to shoot day after tomorrow, but tomorrow you have to go in and participate in the rehearsal. And then I'm there with Denis, the director of Dune. I'm there with Roger Deakins, one of the best cinematographers in
Just
film
hanging
history.
with Deakins. Like, hey.
Sitting next to, Benicio and Emily Blunt and Josh Brolin. And in some ways it's fantastic, and in some ways it's the worst because I'm the guy with the least responsibility, but also the most responsibility because I have 2 lines. So I don't want to screw up those 2 lines. You know what I mean? Like I feel such pressure to be like, oh my God, everyone around here is so famous. They're so famous. Don't think about that. Just do your job. But oh my God, they're so famous. But those gigs were really great. And then I got to do more, I've steadily gotten to do more over the years. I got a little bit more screen time in a movie called Whiskey Tango Foxtrot with Tina Fey that they shot here. They allowed us to improvise a lot. Some of my improvisation made it into a couple scenes, and that was exciting. And did a really fun episode of The Night Shift on NBC. That's the time where I've been able, as far as television, I have, 5 or 6 scenes that all made it in. And it was like a great moment where I really got to interact with the cast and have some really fun moments with them. And then most recently Paper Tigers, which is, probably the thing I'm the most proud of and the thing I was the most involved in to date as far as mainstream film and television.
Yeah, we cannot wait to talk about Paper Tigers, but that comes a little bit later.
Yeah.
Why don't we talk about, as you've been able to do these amazing smaller parts in really large movies, you've also been creating furiously on YouTube with a character that you created yourself and is now sitting pretty at, like, I think 700,000 subscribers, over 700,000 subscribers.
We just hit 800. We just hit 800 yesterday.
Woo,
800,000
congratulations, man.
Thank you. Thank you. It's yet another milestone that I didn't think we were going to hit because when we first started the channel, the channel had been around a little bit, but we went to, I'm jumping ahead here for a second, but we went to YouTube Space in LA where they have those studios. Yeah. And you could gain access to certain areas of the building based on your subscribers. So 10,000 subscribers got you in the door. And then 100,000 subscribers got you into the mid-level studios, and then you needed 1 million to get into the big sound stages. Gotcha. And we went there for orientation because we had, I think, 22,000 subscribers at the time. And they were like, well, the next level up is 100,000. And I was like, well, that's the end of that conversation. Well, I don't even need to. I was like, that's never going to happen. That's never going to happen. So I wasn't even listening about what we could do with 100,000 subscribers. And then, like, I want to say 3 or 4 months later, we did a video called 100 Ways to Attack the Groin. That was just like it was an afterthought. We really did it because I noticed that other YouTubers did something to commemorate their 100th video upload. And I thought, oh, well, that'd be kind of cool. I mean, I guess, yeah, I had a couple of other stupid ideas that were really complicated. And then I was just like, what if I just find 100 ways to hit you in the balls? Like, what about that? and what the story I always tell about that is that when we were shooting that, we had a couple of interns from the college there to help us out because they just wanted to work on the show. And I said, okay, well, keep track of how many hits we do because I'm going to lose count. And so we filmed for about an hour and we were thinking of all the different hits and stuff we could do. And I was like, okay, how many is that? And she's like, 17. And I was like, oh my God. We just spent an hour on 17 hits. I was like, we're going to be here all fucking day. And so we were like, okay, we have to stop thinking so much about this. Just do it. Just do it. So anyway, we did that video. We released it, and it was our first video to reach 1 million views. And within about 10 days, we jumped to about 60,000 subscribers. And all of a sudden, I was like, oh, so 100,000 is reachable. Like if we just keep doing this, we will reach 100,000. And the million milestone was still one where when I saw that was the next big milestone, I was like, not going to happen. And now we've had a really good year so far where a couple of videos went viral and gave us another huge leap forward where it does look like as long as we keep releasing for the rest of the year, we're going to hit that 1 million.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's exciting.
And how much does it help having the Jackson Wink MMA gym in Albuquerque? I mean, you had I only know her nickname. I'm so sorry. Karate Hottie in one of your videos.
Yeah, Michelle Watterson.
Yeah, it must help to have such great, huge fight fans be able to come to your channel as well now.
Yeah, she's one of our favorite guests. We've been talking about having her on again. And it's been really cool because we've been watching her career really grow over the past decade as we've been growing our own channel and everything. She was actually one of our first when we created the format called Master Ken's Privates, where he brings somebody on and has them demonstrate something that they are clearly an expert at, and then Ken tells them everything they're doing wrong. And she came in and did an episode, and it's one of our top view. I think it's like our 4th or 5th most top viewed video ever because she's a great guest. She's beautiful. She's fun to have on the show. She's incredibly skilled as a martial artist. And yeah, so that has been a great resource. And in fact, when she came over and was on the show, she injured Todd. You see when she does the axe kick, which is when you bring your leg straight up and then you bring it down, bring the heel down on the opponent. We have a pad that's attached to Todd, who's played by Joe Conway, his hand. And what we didn't catch in the video is that she actually broke the pad off of his hand. It was like she ripped the leather off of his hand. So it wasn't that she just knocked it off his hand; she broke it. And so he was sort of playing around like, oh man, kind of that kind of hurt. But after the take, he was like, that really hurt.
I need to go to the emergency room. Get the ambulance.
Stop now.
Yeah, one of the many times that poor Todd takes a real hit in order to create this moment that we create.
Well, could you kind of explain how, one, you got onto YouTube, but two, how you kind of created Master Ken? Is this it seems like you've been a lifelong fan of martial arts, and you can talk about how you got into martial arts, but I'd love to know how you kind of made the process of turning Master Ken into the full-fledged character that he is now.
Yeah. The short version of my introduction to martial arts was that I had a very smart mouth when I was a teenager, and I got beat up a couple of times because I was really good at the battle of the wits. But once the fisticuffs came out, I didn't know what to do, and I got my ass kicked a couple times because I was such a smart ass. And so it became clear that I needed to learn how to at least duck or block or something like that. And so I began studying with a dojo that taught Okinawan Kempo, a type of Okinawan karate, and the kabuto, the weaponry, the sai, the nunchaku, the staff, and everything like that. Very traditional school. Only about 3 degrees of separation from the Master Odo in Okinawa. It was a very traditional school with a lot of etiquette, and it really was wonderful for me. It was something that I needed at that age to harness my energy and harness my, my mischievousness. It was a good way to focus me. And I was a big fan already of action movies and martial arts movies. And so being able to actually learn and practice martial arts gave me a lot of, it gave me an outlet that I really, really needed to focus myself. And so I studied martial arts off and on for most of my life, just bouncing from dojo to dojo. When I moved away from back east, out to California and then to New Mexico and then back to Maine, I always went to whatever the local dojo was of whatever new neighborhood I was in, and I would just sign up. And having been at a very legitimate and traditional school, I didn't know about what they tend to refer to as McDojos, where people just kind of decide that they are karate masters and they start up a school. And I didn't know that you didn't need any kind of certification. You could just sort of decide. And so I walked it when I lived in Anaheim Hills. I was staying with my aunt out in that area, and I went to a school down the street, and they had something called groin sparring. And the guy explained, he said, listen, the only target that matters in the street is the groin. So that's all we go for. And he was dead serious. And then for my first fight, he made me fight a woman. And and I was just like, this is the most bizarre. I couldn't believe it was real. I couldn't believe it was a real thing. And so it was the beginning of an introduction to a whole genre of martial arts, a whole subculture of martial arts that over the next decade gave me all these weird stories about meeting some really great people, some really, interesting people. And after that amount of time, people were beginning to do webisodes, YouTube shows. And I didn't really understand what that was, but some people were producing them here locally. And I worked on a couple of them and thought, well, this seems kind of fun, like an episodic that you put online so that people will watch. That's kind of a cool idea. And I thought, what am I going to do it on? And at the time, I was obsessed with the Ricky Gervais version of The Office.
Mhm.
I had just discovered that. And when I first discovered it, I thought it was a real documentary. For like 10 minutes, I was like, who is this jerk? And then it dawned on me. I was like, oh my God, this is brilliant. I can't believe I fell for this. And so I had been watching that obsessively. And I thought, okay, well, I want to throw the mockumentary thing into the martial arts world. And I had seen Foot Fist Way, and I thought that was an interesting film on its own, but I wanted to do something that was a little bit broader, something that had more slapstick, something that had a humor that was a bit more obvious, instead of just the Jody Hill discomfort kind of style that he has, which is he's done a great job with that, but I knew I wanted to do something that was in a different direction. And so Master Ken was an amalgam of Frankenstein of every odd characteristic I'd ever collected from any instructor or martial artist I'd ever met. And so I took all these different ideas and sort of turned him into this one guy that embodied all of the things that most people would probably agree are wrong with American martial arts.
Yes.
And tried to fit him into one guy.
Well, it's a home run. You definitely found that perfect spice blend to make it work so well. Because as you're watching Master Ken, you know this guy, you know him so well, and he just believes his milieu so much that you can't help but keep watching him just kind of fall on his face, yet be an expert in it at the same time. It's a wonderful character to watch.
Yeah, his self-assuredness is one of the things that keeps him. It's like I never really feel like Ken is particularly malicious. He's just he's ignorant, and he's ignorant, yet he's so self-assured, and so he's not interested in anybody else's view or opinion. He's so sure that he knows the right thing, and him being kind of a strong figure, a bit of an imposing figure, physically and personality wise, saves him from more embarrassment than he would probably get if he was tiny, or if he was really out of shape, or if he was not able to, like, he looks like he might be able to handle himself in a fight, but he says stupid stuff so often that you're always kind of like, I can't tell if this guy could actually take somebody in a fight or if he knows nothing,
Right.
Well, that's kind of the perfect thing of the character, right? Because you are in very good shape, and it seems like you've obviously been doing you've been doing martial arts for your entire life, so it's your movements are very fluid and very good. But yeah, the entire time he speaks, you're just like, what?
Yeah.
Well, and that was something that martial artists picked up on when we began to release the show. People would see it who were lifelong martial artists or who had been trained in the military, and they would watch it and they would go, okay, so some of that stuff is legit martial art. Like those are movements or stances or terminology that is legit. Only it's being delivered in such a way that is not legitimate. So they're kind of like,
that's the perfect thing of a mockumentary. Like, that's why mockumentaries work. Like, there has to be that like really solid grain of truth, right? Like, the reason why Spinal Tap works so well is because a lot of bands are like that. Like, the truth of the matter is that a lot of bands are that dumb and that vain and are going through those situations. Same thing with a lot of martial arts instructors. A lot of them have never been trained in anything except for old kung fu films, and they decided to start a dojo.
Right. Exactly. And that made it, I think that made it easier for the martial arts audience to embrace us, because they knew that we weren't from the outside looking in and making fun of them. I was able to say, no, I'm a martial artist. It's always been a hobby and a passion of mine, and I'm highlighting the things that I both love about that world and despise about that world. And so there was a common ground there where they could say, and that was also why I was really glad that we made up our own martial art, because for a minute I was going to attribute his style to something that I already knew. I had done American Kempo, Okinawan Kempo, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but then I thought, well, but if he makes up his own style, then he can number one, he can say and do whatever he wants, and nothing ever will be fact checked because he made up his own martial art. And number two, he gets to say that everybody else is terrible. There isn't another martial art that he likes. And so that gave a lot of freedom to make fun of everybody equally in a way that I think if I had said he was a Taekwondo instructor or something, I feel like it wouldn't have resonated in the same way.
No, making it a Meridote is perfect. Like, of course that dude would make his own style.
Yeah.
And name it after America.
Yeah.
like, of course.
He like read the book on Bruce Lee. He was like, all right, I'm going to do that, but better.
Right.
Yeah. These colors don't run. Ameridote. Could you kind of talk a little bit about, like, we're obviously on YouTube. I have a YouTube channel. Warren has a YouTube channel. We do Twitch and stream and stuff like that. And we're always interested in talking to people about how they kind of went through YouTube and how they find it now versus how it was before. Could you kind of speak about what it feels like to be a YouTube creator and kind of like break through some of those milestones and maybe advice for anybody who's listening now?
Yeah, it's been a very interesting journey because we started on YouTube, and then at one point it felt like we go through these huge swings where it's like we're working really hard and it feels like nobody's watching and it feels like we can't find our groove. And sometimes that goes on for months, sometimes longer. And then I at one point I began to focus more on Facebook and do more native uploads to Facebook because I was getting more of a response on Facebook. And then that would kind of even out. And then I thought, okay, well, Instagram, and now that we're consistently on all three, I actually kind of like that because it's 3 chances for us to find the audience that likes it the most. And it's very interesting to see that some videos will absolutely crash and burn on 2 of the 3 platforms, but go viral on 1. Mm-hmm. And then sometimes we manage to make one that all 3 platforms do really well on. And I think it's the trickiest part is that you just never know what's going to hit. And that is the hardest part about it, is that no matter what, you have to remain consistent and dedicated to it as much as you can, because you don't know how that's going to pay off. One of the biggest examples of that is a video. This is a bizarre case, and this is something, again, that you can't really plan for. But we did a very simple video called "How to Break Someone's Neck," and it was Ken with the bob back there,
yep.
And it's a 57 or 59 second video. It was really just done as an aside when we were filming something else, and I uploaded it 7 years ago. It had settled at about 200,000 views, I think, and then didn't do anything. And that 200,000 views took a while for it to get there. Maybe 3 months ago, I went to sign into the YouTube app analytics, and I was like, just looking at, it tells you how many views every 48 hours,
Yep.
And I looked at that and it said 1.1 million views. And I was like, well, that's not correct. I said, we haven't even released a video this week. Well, how do we get 1 million views in the past 48 hours? And I went and looked it up. And that video, How to Break Someone's Neck, apparently ended up in the recommended feature on YouTube and caught fire, absolutely caught fire. So that video 3 months ago had 200,000 views. It is about to hit 10 million views on the channel. And
the YouTube gods, unknowable.
It's so bizarre, right? It's a 1-minute video that is 7 years old that by its title technically probably violates the community guidelines because even though we are clearly being satirical, that's very subjective depending on what the content is. And I'm not saying that to get it taken down. Hopefully it stays up. But that video overperforming lifted the entire channel up. Like everything, the traffic of people began to discover all of the videos that we did put more work into. And that's sort of the rewarding thing, is like, yeah, you'll have that throwaway video that goes viral once, a few times a year or once every other year or whatever. But the great thing is that it brings people that end up becoming dedicated fans of the videos that took you a week or 2 weeks or a month to make, that nobody watched when you first put them out, but then the fan base grows and eventually people do appreciate the videos that took more work. So the trickiest thing about it really has been maintaining consistency. And that I've learned more specifically from I got to give a shout out to one creator, John Correa, who has a firearms channel called Active Self-Protection. I met him at an event that we did and began to ask him questions, and he gave some great advice. But I remember telling him at one point, like, I can't produce content as quickly as you do. You produce a video a day, because a lot of his stuff is found footage and he gives an introduction before and after the video. It's a very contained format. And he said, okay, well, no one's saying you can't be an artist. If you want to be an artist, release whenever you feel like it. He said, do what you want to do. That's the beauty of this platform. But he said, if you want to grow, you have to upload as often as you possibly can. He said, that's just the way it is. He's like, I know that it's frustrating, but either you do it and you grow, or you don't do it and you don't grow. And when I really accepted that, I was like, well, then that's the game, man. Like, I can either play the game, or I can just sit back and be frustrated that it doesn't go the way that I want. And so when I have been able to really buckle down and release at least one video, sometimes 2 videos per week, if I can do that for 2 or 3 months, it's just a given that the content is going to get out to people. The subscribership is going to grow. One of those 10 videos or 12 videos is going to hit really well. Yeah. And that's the hardest part, though, is that it is a grind. It is an absolute grind, because people see this and they think, oh, you just put your phone in selfie mode and goof off. And it's like, no, man, this is hard work. You have to work all the time at this, and you can't even really enjoy when the video is done and out, because you're like, you take a minute. Exactly. You take a minute, you have a soda and a sandwich and a breath of fresh air, and then you're like, I have to finish editing the next video. I have to.
While simultaneously filming the next video on top of that too.
Exactly. You have to be doing that all the time in order to keep up with it. And I used to let this bother me. It doesn't anymore, but I would release a video on the channel, say the video is 7 minutes long, and it's been online for 3 minutes. And I would see a comment going, when's the next one? And I'd be like, listen, let me enjoy this for 7 minutes. Like, give me I'd be like, you could not have even watched the whole video. Yeah. Give me 7 minutes to enjoy the fact that I completed something, and then I will then move on to the next video. But the upside of that, as I began to reframe it, was like, man, they like the content so much. Like, as soon as we put a video out, they're like, more content. And so feeding the beast, as we call it, is the biggest challenge of it. But it will pay off if you can stick with it. The trick is, for some people it takes a year. For some people it takes, we're coming up on 10 years of when we first launched our first video. And then we've taken breaks and we've rethought the show and everything. But I constantly come back to it because of how satisfying it is to have a dedicated audience who wants to see the content, because that means so much to me that, if the views drop down terribly and we were only getting like 50 views or 100 views per video, and we'd been doing this for 10 years and it's like we had already peaked and no one was interested anymore, I would say, okay, well, that was a good run. It was fun. I'm glad we did that. But the fact that people keep watching motivates me to keep creating.
Yeah, absolutely. Beautiful. No, it's amazing anytime any audience engages with it. But yeah, to see like the spikes that you've had over the couple of years, right? Where it's just like, oh, you wake up one morning, it's like, oh, we got 1 million views. You might not pay off instantaneously. Like, most art doesn't. Very few pieces of art actually hit exactly when they're supposed to hit. Most of the time you languish in obscurity for a really long fucking time, and then eventually, because you've been creating stuff for so long and you're just so kind of in the thing, people eventually find you then. And it's the 10-year overnight success.
Right. Yeah, and the other thing that I want to make sure I mention is that I had technically, this is my 3rd YouTube channel.
Oh, interesting.
I started one just for me personally when I didn't understand how YouTube worked. I uploaded my short films from film school just so they had a place where I could send links to people. And then I created one for my company. When I started my company, I thought, oh, well, I should have a company page. And that one had, each iteration was a little bit more successful. The personal page, nobody ever watched anything on there. It was like, I was lucky if I got 100 views on something. And then when I created the one for my company page, A couple of commercials that I created actually got some really good play. They got up into the tens of thousands, and I was like, oh, shoot, that's exciting. And then I never knew what to do with that. I was like, what do? Do you follow it up? I mean, what do you do with that? So
commercial number 2.
Yeah,
exactly. It was sort of like, oh, well, that was an exciting moment, and now I don't know what you do with that. And then the Enter the Dojo show featuring Master Ken was something that was technically the third attempt to figure out this YouTube thing. And I did feel like each time I did it, I got closer to what I was trying to do. So that's another thing, is to remember to be open to changing your approach. Like, just because your only channel that you've ever created doesn't quite hit, doesn't mean that it isn't ever going to hit. And it also doesn't mean that you shouldn't consider another version of the channel, or a spin-off of the channel, or a complete reinvention of what it is you're trying to do, because you don't know what the thing is going to be.
Sure.
Yeah.
Also with your channel too, it seems like you're not beholden to trends too. Like, it seems like you love what you're doing, and so that you're able to do content that you organically can create then. So it seems like an important lesson for YouTube creators to just do what you love first, and then allow the videos to come from there, instead of chasing after views or trends or things that are going to pop up in the algorithm, because that's going to become tiresome for you. And then 10 years later, you're probably not going to enjoy making it anymore.
Yeah, that's a really tough thing, because we have gotten into, there have been times when we happen to speak on something that trends at the exact right time, and we get phenomenal growth and phenomenal engagement, and then we make the mistake of saying, well, let's do it again. And in some ways, it's almost like, as soon as you do something that works, you shouldn't try to do anything similar to it at all, because we did, we had, I don't know if you guys were aware of the Twisted Tea phenomenon with
When the guy hit him in the head.
Yeah,
Yes,
and that,
absolutely.
Yeah. So I saw that viral video, and then I love memes, and I was just seeing my feed being filled with these Twisted Tea memes. So I thought, well, that's probably a video, right? Because the guy hit the guy with the can. We could do something with that. So we shot that video between Christmas and New Year's, and I edited and uploaded it on New Year's Day. And I thought, no one's going to watch this. Like, it's New Year's Day. Like, people are just hanging out. Like, they're not going to be online. I don't know.
They're into Quibi now. How am I?
They're all on
this video?
They're all on Quibinon, and they're not going to watch. And that video, within, I don't know, 3 or 4 days, got 14 million views on Facebook. It was our top viewed video ever that we had ever uploaded. And it was a good video, but I didn't anticipate that response. And then, of course, the excitement is, okay, we got to do another trending topic right away. And we did 2 or 3 in a row that just bombed. Like, nobody watched them. We were working really hard to rush them out because we have to capitalize on this. Nothing. So that's why consistency is a lot more important, and making content that you like making is a lot more important, because you absolutely will burn out if the way you gauge the success of the channel is mostly on how many views it gets, how many subscribers you get, instead of whether or not it was content that you enjoyed making, and that the dedicated fans that follow you respond to and say, hey, that was one of your best videos. We really enjoy that. So I do absolutely agree. Chasing trends is a tricky thing you can get stuck in and burn out very easily.
No, absolutely. But speaking of content that we absolutely loved, let's talk about fucking Paper Tigers.
All
a
right.
brand new film that you are a co-star of. And we just have to say, me and Warren watched this movie today, rented it on YouTube. You can also rent it on Amazon and a bunch of other platforms. But basically, anywhere you can rent a film, you can rent Paper Tigers right now.
iTunes, if you rent it on iTunes, you get the bloopers.
Oh. We need to do that.
We fucking love this. As I don't know if you know this, but on PCPP, Pop Culture Party People, we watch old kung fu films all the time. That's a big part of the channel, is going back and watching really bad kung fu movies. And when I found out, one, that I knew you personally and that you were making a new kung fu film, I was like, oh fuck, this is gonna be great. This is perfect for the channel. Mm-hmm. This is wonderful. So could you kind of talk about Paper Tigers a little bit? Kind of give us a rundown of what the film is, how you got involved, and all that good stuff.
Absolutely. So I actually first heard about the movie I got a phone call from the executive producer, Yuji, who was from
Danny?
he was from Karate Kid 2. He was the
Oh yes, that's
Yes.
right. He's the waiter. In the
yeah,
Yes.
Yuji Akamoto was one of the executive producers of the film, and he made
There it
he made an appearance in the film as well in
Mhm.
Paper Tigers. And so I already knew who he was from the Karate Kid Part 2,
Mhm.
being the villain. And I was really excited to hear from him. He had reached out to me because he knew a stunt coordinator named Al Goto, who I had worked with on Odd Thomas, a movie that Stephen Sommers directed that I had a really great time working on. And
Rip Anton Yelchin.
yes, the late great Anton Yelchin, who was so wonderful to work with. I really I loved working with him, and I felt it was such a tragic his end was such a tragic loss because he's so talented and just a really genuinely good person to work with, and really enjoyed that.
A lot of
And,
celebrity deaths aren't that big of a deal, but like that one, I was like, "Fuck, that dude was great," and he was young as fuck.
Yeah, he had that was the thing, is that he had already achieved so much and yet had so much more to do, so that was such a shame. But Al connected me with Yuji because some of the guys involved in creating Paper Tigers were fans of Master Ken, and they felt like I might be right for the role of Carter in the movie, the angry kung fu instructor who had been waiting 25 years for his chance to get back at the guys who used to pick on him in high school. And so they sent me the script. I loved the script. I talked to Bao, the director, over the phone, and we had a great conversation. And then nothing. And then I didn't hear anything. And I thought, well, I must have biffed that phone call, because I'm thinking I thought it went well, but apparently not, because that's I didn't hear from them for, I want to say, like, at least a year. I didn't hear from them.
Yeah.
And it might have been more like a year and a half. And then Joe, who plays Todd, he and I were changing planes. I don't remember what airport we were in. We were coming back from a Master Ken live appearance at an event. And I got a phone call from the director, from Bao, saying, hey, we're greenlit, we're financed, we want you to play Carter, and we start shooting in 6 weeks.
Wow.
And I was like...
Didn't even have to audition?
Yeah, I was like, oh my God. Okay. Now, as far as auditioning, I did have to audition. I don't remember ever reading the dialogue scenes. I feel like they felt that the work that I already had out there showed that I could probably do the acting part. They weren't sure about the kung fu part. This is where it goes. This is so constantly people are asking if Master Ken actually knows any real martial arts. That's a constant question, right? So they sent me a bunch of videos of kung fu forms and sequences, and just wanted me to film myself doing them and send them back. So I worked on them really hard. They were very different from my martial arts style, but I worked on them and sent them back. And so they had gotten the idea that I could probably do the role. But they said, so we start shooting in 6 weeks, but we need you in LA like week after next, because we have to do a week of choreography, stunt rehearsal. We have to get you moving like a kung fu guy, and we have to start blocking the scenes right now. And man, I was like, yes, absolutely, I want to do the movie. I'm totally psyched. Of course.
Yes.
Was in LA was in LA maybe a week later, and was there with the action team, Sam and Ken and Carrie, and we were doing. I thought that if I knew karate, that meant I could do kung fu, and that was not the case.
Very different.
It was so hard. And we were doing rehearsals 8 hours a day. We weren't like sort of going in and working out for an hour and then talking or whatever. We were rehearsing nonstop all day. Wow. And I would go back to my hotel and I would limp up the stairs and I would make sure I didn't sit or kneel, because I knew that once I did, I was not going to move. I would step directly into the shower off. I would walk over to the air conditioning. I would blast the air conditioning. It was because we were rehearsing in the summer in LA. And I laid down on the bed, and that was where I was going to be until I had to go to rehearsal the next day. I couldn't. I was in so
wish you
much.
had some of the pressure point things that they do in the movie.
I needed Ron's character to give me the buttons on the spine, because man, I was in so much pain.
Well, That's amazing.
Yeah, it was great. So the preparation for it was great, but it was one of those things where once it was greenlit, the whole thing happened incredibly, incredibly fast.
Mm-hmm.
Well, one of the things that me and Warren were really taken with the film, and don't get me wrong, we have a couple of gripes just story-wise, but for the biggest thing for the movie, it just seems like every single person is having so much fun while they were making the movie. Like, we kept commenting on, like, the amount of chemistry that you guys had is pretty impressive, honestly. Like, it was the level of joy that is, like, being seen between the characters is really awesome, and it's pretty amazing, because you had never met these guys before, right? This isn't like a team that you'd ever worked with, people that you had known deeply, right? Like, that's...
Yeah, and that was one of the magical things about this particular movie, is that it just happened to attract a bunch of people who love the genre so much, who are fans of martial arts films, particularly films of the 70s and 80s, and we all grew up watching those movies, and then we were coming together to make our entry into that genre, our tribute, really. All trying to contribute our little piece of, like, oh man, this is what I love about the genre. So I want to try to embody some little piece of this, this big story that has been told in so many ways as far as martial arts movies. And, you know, one of the most fun things about sort of being on set and, you know, waiting for relights and waiting for things, you know, things to set up, is we found ourselves quoting old 80s action movies, old Van Damme movies, old Jackie Chan movies, you know, old Bruce Lee movies, and being like, gosh, we really are all fans of a lot of the same films. And I think it shows in the movie, as you're saying. And as far as the fun that we had, I showed up, the first scene that I shot was the funeral scene.
Nice, yeah.
And Ron Juan, I was really nervous, and because I hadn't really had a part in a movie. I hadn't had this big of a part in a movie before, and I was really excited, but I didn't know if I was going to do a good job. And so we did the scene where we square off, and he starts hitting me with all these insults that aren't in the script. And I'm kind of thrown by it, because they're good insults. He's really getting me, and I'm flustered, and I couldn't think of anything to say. And thank God it was right before lunch. So they were doing all of his close-ups and all the 2 shots with him and Elaine, who played Danny. And then we broke for lunch, and I went on. I was like, you can't lose to him on the first day. You have to get him back. You have to get him back. You have to get him back. You can't be unfunny on your first day. And so I went over to a little corner away from everybody at lunch, and in my head, I wrote like 8 or 9 insults that I thought, okay, I'm going to say this, and then I'm going to say that, and then I'm going to call him this, and then I'm going to make fun of his weight. And I'm going to do, you know. And so we went in, and I started doing those, and I could hear some chuckles back by Video Village, and then I could hear them scolding Jesse, the first AC, to be like, Jesse, you can't laugh over the, just you gotta be quiet. We gotta get through the take. And so once I started trying to ruin takes, being like, oh, I'm gonna get him. Then Ron started coming right back at me, and then we kind of established that we were gonna go at each other the whole movie. And so we had this kind of healthy competition to see, like, what can we each bring to every scene every day that makes it funnier. So we would do, and to Bao's credit, Bao, as long as we did enough takes that he got what he wrote, which we always had to do first, then he would say, okay, guys, next one's yours. See what you come up with. And then we would just riff until we felt like we had something that, you know, and sometimes we came up with something, and sometimes Bao was like, okay, you had your chance, we're moving on. But that set the tone for the entire production.
And it really worked. Your guys' back and forth is so funny. I love the scene where he walks into your dojo and he walks right by and you go, smells like Rogaine. it's like these little jabs here and there. It's just so great. Like, he can never one can be off their guard in that movie. It's so funny.
And the great thing is the fight scenes in that are very well choreographed. Like, let it not be said that this is a comedy first and foremost, but honestly, the fight scenes in this are beautifully executed. And obviously they have Guy De Silva, who's a big fan favorite of here on the channel, stunt guy who we love watching. Like, you could tell the level of craft that went into doing the fight choreography in this. And as you said, you did months of like training before then to like get ready for it, or at least weeks.
Well, I wish I'd had months. You know, I think considering how quickly it came together, it was, I mean, the fight scenes are great on their own. And then when you think about the fact that there was a limited amount of time to choreograph and rehearse. And even then, when we did the structured rehearsal, figuring out what the movements were going to be in LA, and then a few weeks later they sent me tapes being like, hey, we revised some of this, so I had to relearn some of the things. Then I get to Seattle where we filmed the movie, and Ken comes up to me and he's like, hey, so we made a couple changes, and I'd be like, oh, okay. And I've learned those, and I'm like, okay, I've got it down. And then even on the day, partially because, with a movie this size, you're shooting so fast, some things have to go. And so, even on the day we were filming, he was like, you know what, compress this, lose that move. That's not reading for camera. Do it bigger, do it smaller, do this. And constantly adapting to it. Which was great, and also is indicative of so much of actual filmmaking, because you assume that a lot of the things that you do, particularly in action choreography or anything you rehearse, is going to be done as you rehearse it. That hardly actually ever happens. A lot of the time, you are thrown into the mix, and it's like, okay, we're going to do about 50% of what we rehearsed, but we rewrote and reblocked this, and you have to learn it right now. You have to go and do it right now. And it's like, it's okay. Oh, geez. But that also creates a kind of excitement about it that I really think translates in the action scenes.
Yeah. There's one scene in particular that I want to ask you about. It's before the duel you have with the three tigers, and you do all the traditional stance. You do the tiger, you do the dragon. How much of it was that improvised, and how much was that originally done? It has such a great character moment where it has these great character elements and this great homage to classic kung fu films, while also showcasing this guy's real asshole ready to get his revenge montage.
Yeah, and overzealousness for the culture, which we'll talk about after you answer
that
this question.
was so that was definitely part of it. Like there was that was described in the script as a very long a long presentation, a long bow that showcased the most prominent animal styles in kung fu. But that was an evolving form too, because Ken taught me a version of that form weeks before we shot. And then when I got to Seattle, he said, hey, so I've kind of reblocked this. So then I relearned a different version of the form. And he was telling me, he's like, okay, this is the tiger, this is the dragon, this is the crane, all this stuff. And I was like, okay, I got it. And then once we got there, I think that Bao was the one who was like, I want you to say them. I want you to say the animals. And I was like, oh, well, that's kind of fun. Yeah. And so then we started. And so then there was the animals that I knew I was doing. And then Bao was like, well, what other animals you got? And I was like, oh, no. Okay. And so, we must have shot 20 or 25 different animal movements.
So fun.
So obviously, there's not enough room for all of them. But that was another great moment where it was like, the foundation of the idea was there, but the evolution of it really just became more and more fun and more visual, and just got better as we went.
Well, one of the things that I was really impressed with the movie is obviously Hollywood is pretty notorious for bad representation, or just kind of being slow to getting to good representation. Actually, I have to say Army of the Dead did a pretty good job of representation. They don't shove it in your face. Plenty of interesting characters, really interesting. And I feel that this film does a really good job with that. Did you have any hesitation as a white person doing martial arts to be like, I want to respect this, of course, and I know that this film has Asian representation. I want to put my best foot forward and make sure that it goes well for everyone.
I feel like the reason I wasn't really worried about that is because in the script, it was so clear what Bao was doing, where he wrote this character that was the white guy who is obsessed with Asian culture and yet doesn't know how lame his presentation of it can be, with him, trying to speak the language and him saying things like, we Chinese have a saying, where he doesn't even.
Oh my God!
He's not even aware of his own appropriation. He fully believes that he is this guy. So in a way, I didn't actually feel like I was in danger of misplaying that, because I was like, well, that's right on the page. This guy is that guy who wishes he was part of that culture, and the harder he tries, the more ridiculous he appears to be.
No, dude, you hit it note perfect. And I do think
Yes.
that translates back to Master Ken, right? Like, it's one of those things where it's kind of easy to toe that line from a performance that you've already kind of mastered, right? Like, and kind of came up with yourself. And I think, of course, it's handled just perfectly. But yeah, like, I think in other hands, that could have been a problematic character, as the younger kids say.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it certainly. I agree that handled differently, it probably could have. But I just have to go back to it being a testament to Bao as a writer director, completely understanding that character. And of course, they developed this film. Him and the producers developed this film over a decade.
Oh wow!
And so they were to the point that by the time they were filming, everybody that had been on that journey knew every word of the script. They knew every word of dialogue. They knew everything about the character because they were so sure about this movie and they so badly wanted it to be made. So all that, I don't feel as if there was a lot of guesswork at that point. I joined the project just about as late as I possibly could have, compared to everyone who had really decided on the story they wanted to tell. And so luckily when I showed up, by the time I was part of it, a lot of the guesswork of that had been taken out.
Yeah, and it really shows the final product too, because this movie feels like three best friends wanting to make a movie, and then like their lives got in the way, and they became professionally very successful, and they finally came back together. Like, oh, now we can make the movie we've always wanted to make. There's just so much joy and so much fun happening the entire time that it seems like even bled into their younger versions, where those three guys in those flashback sequence in the beginning feels like they're best friends. I feel like I'm watching found footage on YouTube of three best friends going around challenging dojos.
No, the love is there.
Yeah, they definitely, again, that's another thing they captured with every level of the cast, with every level of the characters that they developed, so that it was easy to walk into that and just feel at home.
Well, you can rent Paper Tigers on iTunes, on YouTube, on Amazon. Apparently rented on iTunes, so you can get those bloopers and other things from the movie.
And the reason I'm pushing the bloopers is because a significant amount of the improvisation that me and Ron did is in the bloopers. There is so much wild stuff in the bloopers. So if you get a chance to check that out, I promise you will enjoy it.
That sounds... I think we're going to have to rent it again.
Yeah.
Well, that brings us to the end of this episode of Pop Culture Party People. But before we leave, before we close out the show, we have questions that we like to ask our guests before they head off back into an un-PCP world. And those questions are these. Warren, do you want to start us off with question number 1?
Yeah. Matt, what fictional character are you punching on sight?
Oh man, a fictional character that I'm punching on sight. You know, the worst thing is that the character that I would have said, the guy who played him just died.
Oh no!
Now I can't say it. Let's see. A fictional character. I'm totally bombing on this. There's none. You don't give anybody a genre. You just say any fictional character.
Any fictional character. What fictional character do you truly hate? Like, I know
or really
for
hurt
Potterhead,
you. Yeah.
I would say for Potterheads it would be like Dolores Umbridge. For people who, our last guest said Navi from Legend of Zelda because he hated her stupid little voice.
Yeah.
Come back to that one. That. I'm gonna think of one.
Okay, if you could have any one fictional pet, what would it be? Mythical, legendary, anything.
Mogwai. A Mogwai.
Wow. A lot of responsibility.
Nice.
A lot of responsibility. I'm not saying that I would handle it properly, but the 48 to 72 hours before I accidentally get him wet or feed him after midnight would be so cute. He'd be so adorable right before I set loose a bunch of gremlins to destroy the town.
I want to see Master and Ken and Mogwai so badly together now.
The crossover we've all been asking for.
Now, this can be either fictional or in real life. Do you have a most beloved rival?
Most beloved rival? Like somebody that I would, like, how do you mean?
So like, in the context of like Pokemon the game, you had Gary as your rival constantly following you. Or in a movie, you can feel like almost like Johnny is a rival in a way, you know? Like,
okay,
like,
yeah.
Yeah.
Only because I've been rewatching them lately, I would have to say Skeletor, probably.
Oh, wow.
Because he's so ridiculous. I never realized when I was a kid how ridiculous Skeletor is, but I'm rewatching old He-Man Masters of the Universe cartoons, and I'm just like, man, every time he talks, I just crack up.
Well, man, you got the physique for a He-Man. I could see that happening.
Yeah. And the new cartoon comes out soon enough.
I know.
Yeah.
I'm so excited to hear Kevin Smith did that. I'm really excited about that.
No, it's going to be really amazing. If you could own any one fictional item, what would it be? This can be anything. This can be a weapon. This can be the DeLorean from Back to the Future. It can be any fictional item of your choosing.
Oh man, that's a really good one. I want to say lightsaber, but I'm clumsy. Like, I feel like a lightsaber would be so cool, but I feel like it would be like a week before I would cut my toe off or something.
A week? It would be an hour before you
right? I would
killed
looking
yourself.
I just feel like I should not be trusted with that kind of weaponry.
But you already have a Mogwai, so I think we can trust you with the lightsaber as well.
I know, well, but or those are literally the two worst things you could ever give me. And imagine if I got them in the same week. That would be that'd be the end of my life.
All right, I'll take a lightsaber. I think that's fun. You'd have to display it very gently, though. Maybe you couldn't use it. Like, big warning, caution tape around it.
So, if you could make the world watch one piece of pop culture, what would it be?
Oh, that's a really good question. If I could make the world watch one piece of pop culture. Batman vs. Superman. No.
Ultimate edition on Blu-ray.
Yeah, Steelbox, Zack Snyder commentary.
Yeah, I don't know. You know, it's like, I guess it depends on whether or not it would be something that I feel like would be really, really fun or really, really meaningful. You know, it's that kind of. Robert Zemeckis is my favorite. He's my favorite director of all time. And I feel like so many of his films have meant something to me that, you know, it's not a guarantee that one of his films would mean to others what it means to me. But Castaway is one of my all-time favorite movies, and it's something that I feel like it's one of his best films, and it's one of the most important films as far as that I've watched in my life. But it's also like kind of a downer. So I feel like I don't want everybody to be forced to watch something that like kind of bums them out. It's like, why didn't you pick Dumb and Dumber or something that makes everybody
Matt,
laugh?
You forced them to watch that man fall in love with a volleyball just to lose it.
No, it's like, what a shitty thing to do to everybody. Like, of all the things in pop culture, you chose like Ghostbusters. It should be Ghostbusters. That's what I would choose. I would make everybody watch Ghostbusters.
There we go.
Not the new one, the original Ghostbusters.
Oh, yeah. Final question before we go back to the one you'd punch in the face. Who is your fictional wife or husbando?
Is it a character or a performer?
It can be any, my friend.
Yeah.
Oh gosh.
The pop culture party allows all things.
Salma Hayek, whether it's Salma Hayek in Desperado or Salma Hayek 20 years from now, Salma Hayek, Salma Hayek, Salma Hayek.
That's a great choice.
That is a
She's an
great choice.
eternal. She does not age.
Somehow she looks more beautiful every year, and she's amazing. She's a great actress, and yeah, Salma Hayek.
That's a good choice. And then, who you punch in the face, bro?
Who do you want to punch in the face?
I mean, it doesn't even have to be fictional. It could just be an old bully of yours.
Is it Antonio Banderas? Get him out of the way so you can do Salma Hayek in Desperado?
Or her older French husband, who she's married to.
Gosh, who do I... I'm trying. I know there's a bunch of characters that irritate me. I don't know why none of them are coming to mind. I feel like the experience of, even though I was never a small... I was never a small guy like Marty McFly, but I always loved how satisfying it was in each Back to the Future when he punched Biff.
Oh, yes.
So I feel like if I was Marty McFly's size, the satisfaction of punching Biff is something I probably would have wanted to experience at some point.
It's a great answer. Biff just is the perfect bully. He'll last the test of time just being the ultimate asshole and will always deserve a nice punch in the face.
Yep.
He's fucking awful. Then the actor, who, it's actually sad that he didn't get more work because that dude is actually really good.
I know he's a fantastic actor, but he was he's just one of those actors that you see him and you're like, Biff!
Biff.
30 years later, you're like, Biff!
He's feeding the homeless and hungry, and you're like, Biff, what an asshole.
He becomes president of the United States. It's like, Biff is president!
Oh, well, that is it for another episode of Pop Culture Party People. Thank you so much for watching and listening. Is there anything that you'd like to plug, Matt, before we get on out of here?
Say, please check out Paper Tigers, the Paper Tigers movie. You can find it on a bunch of platforms, Amazon, iTunes, YouTube. Check it out, support it if you like it. Tell people about it. Share the links and the trailers and all that stuff. And then if you've never seen any Master Ken videos, check out Master Ken. You can Google him and find him on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram.
Awesome. Warren, anything you'd like to plug before we head out of here?
Check me out on Chao on Instagram, but really follow my puppy as told by Ginger Pup on Instagram. She's blowing up. Let's get her that verified check and daddy some cash.
Yeah, we need that blue check mark real bad for that pupper. You can follow me at Unlimited Free Time on YouTube, and you can follow me at Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok under all_the_birds. And you can find this very podcast at the PCP Podcast on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok as well. Thank you so much for listening, Matt. Thank you so much for being on.
Thank you so much.
Just remember, we're the Pop Culture Party People. We put the cult in pop culture. Bye.
Bye.